Hi, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 7.23 support tier list video and patch notes. I'm going to try to cover them all in one video. We'll see if we can get this done in about an hour or less. It's ambitious for a patch notes video because usually these last a bit longer, but I'm going to see what I can do. The patch notes themselves are pretty light, but I think there will be some significant meta changes, particularly from the Aery nerf. So I'm going to talk about that. So first off, we're going to talk about the patch notes. Then we're going to go down. I'll just talk about my top 5 for each role, overall meta analysis. Then we're going to jump into the tier 3 support tier list there. Not the tier 3, but rather the support tier list there. Go through that. I did upgrade all of the top 20 recommended runes and items. So if you just click on one of these little mini Google Docs, you can access recommended runes, items, and if I have a guide for the champion, I'll link the guide as well. I'm going to be coming up with more guides as the season unfolds. So I'm going to try to see if I can do at least one guide per week. You can access this Google Doc in the description, by the way, if you don't have time to watch the whole thing or you want to access one of those little mini guides. Just click on the link in the description. It'll take you here, and I'll also have timestamps so you can jump around to your favorite parts. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. The TLDR, if you don't want to watch the patch notes section, biggest gainers, Leona, Cho, Twitch. Okay, let's get in here. All right, Gragas, minor buff. Who cares? He gets a little bit of extra attack speed. Gragas is okay. I mean, he's not a top-tier jungler. The problem is he also competes with J4 and Sejuani for kind of the tanky jungler slot. J4 is better early game, I think, than Gragas is, and Sejuani's better late game. You will see Gragas in competitive play, probably, if they don't change too much else before competitive, which they probably will. But he's picked specifically as a soft counter to J4 because he can block J4's flag and drag with his belly slam, or whatever it's called, body slam. So he's okay. There's nothing implicitly really wrong with Gragas. I just think that he gets outclassed by those two champions right now. But he's still all right. He's good. He's sort of middle of the pack jungler, I think. If you're really good with him, you can still play him and win a lot of games. Jinx got a buff to her chompers, which is an interesting buff. It basically turns her chompers into like a Veigar wall where people can't go through it or they get stunned. For the most part, I think it still counts as a root instead of a stun, so they can still, I believe, cast abilities and maybe auto attack. But that's nice. So now she can preemptively drop her chompers, and it'll almost act like a, yeah, just like a Veigar cage. So now that J4 can't go through it and get on her, trying to think of other instances, like Vi can't like power fist through it to get on her. So it's pretty nice, but the problem with Jinx is she's still a multi-item champion in a single item meta. The meta is very fast right now. There's a lot of excess damage there. Games are ending much faster than they used to. I talked about this in my my notes for the last, or not my patch notes, I guess, but my tier list for the last video. I talked about how the game was speeding up tremendously because there's so much extra damage off of the runes. And that still is true right now. So even with the nerf of Aery, I expect games to be a lot faster. You know, in my experience, I think they're about 5 minutes faster. I know that Riot released something, I don't remember when, and they're like, oh, it's only 30 seconds faster. I mean, obviously they have more game data than I do, but I'll just tell you from experience, and a lot of people that comment on this, I watched some other patch notes from like Scara and LS, everybody agrees it's a much, much faster meta. So what does that mean? That means that it's going to favor champions who are really strong off of one item, maybe 2 items. Jinx really needs 3 to get going. She's an Infinity Edge plus 2 attack speed crit items. So, you know, the old Energizer build is not really a thing anymore, and a lot of that, they got rid of Warlord's Bloodlust, which is a key component to that, but also there's just not enough time to build all those items in a lot of games. Or you may already be too far behind by the time you get those items. So you really want champions that can scale pretty hard off a single item now. So that means Blade of the Ruined King users, Trinity Force users, Duskblade or Ghostblade users. That's really where you want to be. Like, Infinity Edge is still good, and it still scales pretty well, but Ginsu's Rage Blade is another excellent single item power spike on Varus. People are slowly starting to move away from that Infinity Edge model because it just takes too long to get going in this meta. But it's still okay. It's not like it's unplayable. It's just not nearly as dominant as it was a couple of patches ago. Okay, so Rammus got a minor nerf. It's fine. He's still super powerful, one of the best junglers out there. He's criminally underplayed right now. I think a lot of people are just trolling and just not playing the best champions. They're just playing whatever they want to play. because it's preseason and they don't think it affects their MMR. But for those serious people out there who want to win, you should highly consider Rammus, especially if you're platinum and lower. He's very good against all AD teams. He's amazing with Aftershock because he gets double scaling. This is why Leona's so good too, is because they get double scaling. Anyone that scales off of bonus armor and magic resist is going to love Aftershock because that also scales off of bonus armor and magic resist. So they stack with each other. So if you turn on your W, like you roll into, I guess what would probably happen is you would roll into somebody, you'd hit them, it would trigger Aftershock. So you would get this extra armor and magic resist stacked up. So that's going to make your armor and magic resist a certain amount. And then you're going to get the W, which is going to take into account the bonus that you already got off of Aftershock, because that's going to count as bonus magic resist. And it's going to increase your W as well. So, you know, let's say that you have 100 armor rolling into this. Okay, so you trigger Aftershock. That's going to give you an extra 50 armor. Okay, so now you have a total of 150 armor. And then the W is going to trigger and calculate off of the 150. So even at level 1, you're going to get plus 75 armor, and then an additional 20. So you're going to have 195 armor. If you just have a 100 base armor, you're going to get a bonus of 195. What? So you're going to have like 300 armor off of just a level 1 W and just having 100 base armor. Level 1 W and just Aftershock with 100 base armor. You're going to all of a sudden go up to 300 armor. I mean, you're just not killable. You're just unkillable. you basically have invulnerability for 2.5 seconds. And the thing is, Aftershock also does pretty good damage. So, you know, if you are... if you have like 2,000 max health, you're going to get an extra 70 damage off of it. So at level, you know, whatever, maybe 9, then you're going to be doing like 200 damage. And it has a 20-second cooldown, so it's going to be up a lot. And don't forget that's area of effect damage too, that shockwave. So it's not just one person. Like, whatchamacallit up here? Electrocute. This is only single target. So yeah, Electrocute looks like it does more damage as, you know, 50 to 220. But in reality, it's still only single target. So, you know, in a big team fight, then Aftershock's going to do way more damage. And it's going to give you all those resistances. So he's an excellent Aftershock abuser. He has an excellent wave clear early on. Great crowd control, great scaling, great tower taking capabilities if no one's around. So he has really good objective control. So yeah, I think he's really, really good right now. So this nerf, whatever, minor nerf, it's meaningful. I mean, it does nerf 4 armor, but he's still gonna be really strong. Shyvanna, minor nerf. I think Shyvanna's really overrated right now. Seen a lot of people playing her. I mean, she is kind of near the top of the list here. She's like number 3, and she's fairly well played, or picked often. I mean. But she still has no crowd control. She can still be kited fairly easily. She does get Frozen Mallet to try to remedy that early on, but I just think it's difficult to deal with her. Or it's not that difficult to deal with her, I should say. Let me get a drink of water real quick. I've been up most of the night trying to prepare and get this out because I know people want those notes right away. So she's okay. I just feel like, I mean, she does benefit from power farming because now jungles don't have the catch-up experience. So if you get in there and you steal enemy camps, it will set them behind in the jungle. And she can take dragons really quickly. She does do a lot of damage if people leave her alone. But I feel like she can still get kited and just tied up in fights, especially now that you've got these tank supports coming back online. You've got your Threshes, Leona, Tom Kench, a lot Tarek, just a lot of champions that are just going to make it very difficult to stick to your priority target. And you're not going to be able to cut through them that quickly because of Aftershock. It gives them so many extra resistances. So I think it just makes it really hard to do what you want to do when you're Shyvanna in a team fight. Now, she can split pretty well still, and she does use press the attack very well. She has an auto attack reset on her Q. So you can attack, Q, attack, and stack that up really quickly. So she's okay. I mean, she does a lot of damage, but I think she gets outclassed. If you want someone who just does like a ton of damage like that can get kited, just pick Zen. At least Zen has better protection with his ult, and I'm pretty sure he has higher burst damage and even probably sustained damage than Shyvanna. So Shyvanna is really nice. She does clear jungle camps really quick. She's kind of the quintessential power farmer in the jungle. She always has been. So she's okay, but I think she's all right. I mean, you can win games with her. I just feel like there are better options with more crowd control. At least Zen has a knock-up, right? But she's all right. Taliyah's getting a buff for some reason. I think she's really good. They're trying to buff her because they think she uses Phase Rush. Nobody plays Phase Rush on this champion or any champion. I'm not sure where they're getting their data. I don't think. Am I just crazy? I guess they're like maybe once in a blue moon someone will run that. Most people run Aery on her. I mean, after Aery's nerf, maybe they're anticipating people will run Phase Rush on her. I think most people just start running Comet instead. Or they'll probably still just run Aery. Aery's still like alright. I mean, they're giving her a buff because they say that Phase Rush isn't really a good rune, basically. But most people use Aery on her. And most people are still using Aery. I mean, this is since the changes. People are still using Aery on her. So, I don't know, whatever. I mean, the thing about Taliyah is she has really good wave clear in a meta where people don't have a lot of good wave clear. So that's one thing that makes her really powerful. And she does rotate very well. So Taliyah is just a very strong champion. And she's pretty good off of just her single Morellonomicon power spike. So I still think she's a great champion. She has great crowd control, great siege, great wave clear, great rotations. I mean, she's just awesome. She's like the solo queue champion. She's super safe. So I think she's really, really strong right now. If she's not... I've got her number 2. I think Caston's a little above her for most elos and solo queue, but she's definitely really far up there. People just are not playing a lot of Zed and Talon, and I feel like that's stuff that could do very well into her potentially. You might have to force her to get a Zhonya's, which she doesn't want to have to do. But I don't know. They're giving her a buff, so okay, great. Making one of the strongest champions even stronger. Now, it's not much of a buff, but they are giving her bonus armor and health, which is meaningful. Okay. They buffed Ivern and Nunu and these hot fixes. It doesn't matter. Those champions are still extremely weak right now. Ornn they buffed. Doesn't matter. Ornn's like, he's okay. I think he's kind of like a B-list top laner. Like, he's kind of tanky. He can do some meaningful stuff, but I just feel like he gets outclassed by Urgot, who no one's banning right now. Jarvan, Cho'Gath, Maokai. I just feel like there are other options that are similar kind of tanky disruptor champions that are just better top lane than he is. But he's all right. He's certainly the best that he has ever been. I just don't think it's quite good enough yet. And then Sona got some nerfs. We'll talk about that when we go down there, but I think she still is... she's still pretty strong. Okay, runes. This is the big one. This is the thing that actually matters here that's going to be meta shifting. Aery got nerfed, and this is a very meaningful nerf. I've heard some people trying to shake this off, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal. 5 damage early is a really big deal because of how often you proc this thing on people. I mean, people are proccing this like every 5 to 10 seconds. So knocking off 25 damage off of something that you proc every 5 to 10 seconds is a really big deal. Especially later in the game when, you know, it was 60 damage and now it's 40. So that's 33% damage off, right? It's 1/3 off. So, that's pretty significant. So I don't think that it's going to mean that people just all of a sudden can't play Aery champions anymore. But I do think it's going to help diversify the meta a little bit more. So some people that are running Aery right now, like Riven, might switch over and do Comet instead. Or, you know, they might do something like Electrocute. You know, they're just going to pick something else. It's just, it was too strong. That's the thing. It's very strong on poke, harass, damage dealers in lane. It's very oppressive. Especially on people like Teemo and Malzahar, who were both really strong on the last patch because one ability procs it twice. So like Malzahar's Malefic Visions will actually proc Aery on somebody twice. And that's why Teemo was so strong top lane, is because his poison would actually proc it twice if you caught Aery. So you hit him with the poison dart, So you just walk up, auto attack him, throw your blind on him, maybe auto attack him again, and then as Aery walks back to you, if you go up and touch her again, then she'll automatically jump back to them and deal a last tick of damage. So Aery was actually doing 40 damage early on champions like Malzahar and Teemo off of one ability. So instead of 40 now, it's going to deal 30. And that adds up over a long laning phase. So I think overall it's really healthy. It's good for the game to nerf her down. She was too strong. I still think there are other ones that are too strong. I expect Aftershock to get nerfed within a couple of patches. I expect Press the Attack to probably get nerfed. Or they buff Fleet Footwork or Lethal Tempo, one or the other. AD carries aren't really having a good time right now, with the exception of Ezreal and Misfortune are both doing fairly well. This nerf to Aery is going to hurt Misfortune quite a lot because of her early game harassment patterns. But every other AD carry is just really not doing well, at least statistically. If you look, like Ezreal's 58% or whatever, 57, 58, Misfortune's 55, and then it's 50 or less. Like only the top 4 champions have a 50% win rate or less. So most AD carries are in a pretty bad place right now. And that's to be expected, because AD carries are champions that need the most gold and the most items, because often they do the least amount of damage on their abilities in general. So whenever there's a super fast meta, AD carries are going to be bad. AD carries are best in metas where they can build up and get 2 to 3 items, because often they're the highest scaling champions in the game. So that's what you would expect. In longer metas, like the Ardent Censer meta we just came out of, they're going to be very strong. But in metas where... And not just because Ardent Censer specifically helps AD carries, but also because games just last longer. When you have Janna, stalling out the game to 30 to 40 minutes, right? But now you've got, things like Leona, Alistar, Blitzcrank just hitting the gas. And just all of these assassins are back in the jungle. You're seeing like Kayn, Kha'Zix, Rengar, all this stuff. Just very high damage across the board. And so that means that AD carries just can't get to their items fast enough. And that's what we saw last winter as well when they hit the gas. And we had the lethality meta, right? Starting in 7.1 that lasted for at least a few patches. But yeah, that was kind of at the very beginning. There was this, meme like ADC 2K17, where it's like AD carries were so bad, people just started playing Ziggs. And he was successful a decent amount of the time because Ziggs actually does damage with his abilities in lane and has a decent single item power spike off of Morellonomicon. So that was rough. That was a rough time for AD carries. And I think we're kind of back, Ezreal's banned in virtually every game a lot of times. And he's really strong. We'll talk about him here in a second. But outside of him, like Misfortune is very strong. She falls off in higher elos, but she also has kind of a single item power spike when she gets her Ghost Blade. And she uses Aery very well. So she's the most relevant, other than Ezreal, the most relevant kind of early game trading with her abilities type of champion. So she can complement a Leona Engage or a Thresh Engage very well. She does a lot of spike damage early on, especially if you know how to land her Qs correctly by bouncing them off of minions. Callista is another one who is extremely strong early, but she's a lot harder to play than Misfortune. So in Misfortune, even if you're behind and you just press R in a team fight, you're relevant. So I expect, Misfortune, Ezreal will obviously be powerful, but then champions like Varus, you might see some more Ashe. Callista is really strong. Just champions that can do things with their abilities that don't necessarily need a lot of items. So I don't remember how I started talking about ADCs again. We'll talk about ADCs here in a second, but yeah, that's kind of what Aery has done, though, is it just amplified the damage across the board because everybody ran her, from Riven to Sona to Malzahar to Teemo. Just everybody was running this. So that's going to dial back the damage a little bit across the board, but not enough to where it's going to allow some of these 3-item champions to get back into the game. It's going to lower the harass a little bit. So, a primary beneficiary of this that I said is Twitch. Twitch is going to love this because he's someone who is super powerful early on. Vayne's going to like this as well. I don't like Vayne right now in this meta. Although if people start playing tanks again, which they're going to be playing them in support role at least, if you start seeing 2 to 3 tanks, if you start seeing like a, Leona, Jarvan, Urgot in a game, then Vayne might become pretty decent. But right now, I'm not a huge fan of her because she doesn't do a lot of burst damage. She needs multiple items to be useful. Now she can still try to go like Blade the Ruined King or Ginsu's Rage Blade, go for that single item power spike, but it's just pretty slow and she can get bullied out. This certainly helps her because now she's not going to have that Sona just breathing down her neck, just spamming abilities or Lulu in lane. They will still do that, but they'll do less damage off of Aery at least. But the big winner is Twitch here. Because he's someone who can be very powerful off of 2 items. His single item's okay if he goes for like Bork early. But once he gets either Bork or Infinity Edge and then gets Hurricane, then he starts taking off. And so he's one of those champions, though, where he can just completely take over a game by himself. Because of his invisibility, he can roam around and assassinate people. He's just a solo queue nightmare. And he wins team fights, and often he wins 1v1s because he gets the first shot in. So he gets to choose when he fights. Usually he gets multiple shots, and he'll get 2 shots in before someone realizes what's going on. And then they're probably going to die before they can respond fast enough. And he has great range, too, so he's very safe in team fights. He gets to pick when he shows up, and he has massive range, then he can go invisible again. So he's relatively safe as well. People don't bring Pink Wards and drop him in lane a lot of times, especially lower elos, to try to find him when he goes invisible to run away. So Twitch loves this. Obviously, Twitch historically has had some major problems in the early game. He just doesn't do a ton of damage, and that's where you have to punish it. But now, if he can just get... Doran's shield, Aery's going to be doing less damage, and he has either a heal with shielder or he has a tank that's going to be, using Targon heals on him, then I think he's going to be a lot stronger on this patch. Other winners, top lane, champions that may have been suppressed a little bit by Teemo will be stronger. Teemo or Kennen, who are very good sort of Aery abusers. So that means Cho and GP, so primarily Grasp users. Nasus would also fall into this category. But yeah, just people who get to just sit up there and just stack. Either stack their gold with GP or stack their stacks with Nasus or Cho'Gath. Just farm it up. Just unmovable object. And just stack and Grasp. Cho'Gath's just so nasty on Grasp because he gets extra health, which is obviously super good on him, and it just really... I think his spikes, only the first hit and not the spikes themselves apply Grasp. I'm not sure. I just know that Grasp is really good on those champions, and so I think that Grasp users are really going to like this Aery nerf because it's going to give them a much better early game, particularly against Teemo and Kennen, who could brutalize them early. Okay, so I think Aery nerf is going to be good for scaling AD carries, Twitch, Vayne primarily. It's going to be good for Grasp users, and it's going to be good for Aftershock supports. Who, like, Aery supports already had a hard time harassing out something like a Leona or Thresh or Tahm Kench because Targon's got a buff where it heals more, and they would always take Second Wind, which is a really strong anti-harassment tool. Like, it's not quite as strong as... something like Doran's Shield, but it's pretty dang good. It heals quite a lot. So now they're going to have a really hard time harassing through all of that. Okay. Predator got a buff. Doesn't matter that much. I mean, the only champion that should really take this would be Hecarim. But the fact that damage interrupts the extra movement speed just sucks. Like, it should be like Dead Man's Plate, where it's just not interrupted until you do your damage. I don't think that'd be too much to ask. It's on a long cooldown. But instead, they just decided to lower the cooldown. I don't think it's going to matter. Like, not everyone that's not Hecarim is still going to either want to go Dark Harvest or Electrocute. Dark Harvest is actually pretty good if you think your team can kind of hang in there till like 20 minutes and you start taking off. So that's really good on someone like a Kayn, or obviously on something like a Shyvanna or Master Yi. Like, Dark Harvest can be pretty good. Actually, Master Yi and Shyvanna will probably take Press the Attack. I think Kane's probably the best Dark Harvest user. Maybe Graves. So it's okay, but it's just too cute. It just, the cooldown's still too long. What I like this with Aery, what I wish they would have done is just give it a mandatory cooldown of like 10 seconds. But that's okay, I guess. I mean, they want Electrocute to be your, you know, your windowed moment of like burst damage. So they just want Aery to be light harassment damage. So okay, that accomplishes that. Yeah, it says this. That says one is not accurate. Says didn't get nerfed this patch. That was last patch. Okay. All right. So let's talk about top 5 for each role, and then we'll go into the support tier list here in just a moment. We're doing pretty good on time. I guess it's gonna be a little bit longer than I thought, but I might actually. I could break this up into 2 smaller videos and just have them each be like 30, 40 minutes. I might do that. And I'll just type in the comments, and then we'll have the tier list as a separate video, because I'm trying to make like shorter videos to get new people to the channel. I think sometimes when they see like an 1.5-hour video, they're like, oh my god, it's so long, I can't watch that. So maybe break this up and just do a patch notes, top 5 for each role, and meta analysis, and then we'll do the tier list as a separate video. So sorry for the fake out early. I'll write it in the description, the comments, so people understand. It's just try to make the videos a little bit shorter. Okay, so meta analysis first. So Aery champs are going to be weaker, Aftershock supports are going to be stronger, games are going to continue to be fast. A lot of the best comps are still going to run probably 2 assassins plus an 80 carry plus an engaged tank. Some will run 3 assassins, so you might see like a Kayn jungle. And when I say assassins, I mean, I guess like, I'm thinking like squishy high damage champion. So however you want to define that. So you might see like a Kayn jungle, a you know, Fiora top, and a Fizz middle, or something like that would be an example. Although I think that blue Kayn, I guess red Kayn can kind of be tanky. I think that some of the best compositions are going to have the 2 tank setups. So you're going to have your tank support probably, and then at least 1 other tank. So like either like a J4 jungle or a Rammus jungle or a top laner. So like an Urgot top, Maokai top, Cho'Gath top. You might even see the 3 tank. I mean, we might be back in a tank meta again. This meta is evolving so fast, and there's just so many different opportunities. But I do think that Aftershock has become, since Aery got nerfed, like the best option on a lot of champs. Although a lot of the top lane tanks are going to take Grasp, and they're not even going to take Aftershock. So things like Cho'Gath and Maokai are just going to take Grasp, and probably J4 if he goes top. Because Grasp is really good too. But some of the tanky junglers, like I think Sejuani's still pretty good. Rammus is obviously really good. You know, they're going to take Aftershock. So I think people just aren't playing a lot of tanks in the jungle or just anywhere because it's preseason and people are just tired of tanks and they hate them and they just want to have fun and just go for high damage stuff. Just practice like high skill cap stuff they don't know how to play. But I think for people who are serious, like when the new season starts and people are playing for real, I think the tanks are still really good. And a lot of people just aren't playing them. Just because they just don't want to play them. But yeah, I think that'll be good. And I think in general, speaking of that, I think that people are still going to underperform. I've noticed that a lot in my games. Like the level of play has dropped dramatically. And it just creates a lot more chaotic games that just feel more coin flip-ish. And so that means you really have to take control of the situation and you have to play either a hard engaged champ or a damage champ. Like you can still win with Sona, Janna, stuff like that. But because people are just playing stuff they're bad on, or they're just like not really playing to win as much as they were near the end of last season, if you want to win, you have to have a bit more agency in the games. And that's not always the case. I mean, Janna was my highest winning champion last season. I don't think you always have to play, you know, a high damage or hard engaged champ. But I think in this particular meta, where you can just count on people just underperforming a lot more. Now, the enemy team will as well. But once again, that doesn't really... that creates a lot of chaos. So you're just kind of playing at that lower level often if you are playing kind of the classical supports right now, like your Soraka, your Janna, stuff like that. It's hard for you to step the game up and elevate it and really exploit people who are playing weak things on the enemy team, right? Like you want to be able to engage on them when they clearly don't know what's going on, or really punish them for being out of position. So you can still win. I think Sona is still really good. I think that Janna's still really good too. That's just something that I've kind of seen is... Now, I haven't had a good preseason, so let's preface by saying that in terms of like win rate, because I I've been playing to the masses a lot of times, like I've said. And there's just so many random, just weird, wacky, bad things going on. But like my Sona play is indicative of this. Now, yes, I am still learning. You know, I'm still kind of learning the all-ins. Everything's kind of changed. Everyone does more damage. But that Enchanter style of play that was really good, you know, for the last 6 months is a lot harder now. I mean, you know, Sona here, I was 54% win rate, which is pretty good for last season. 54% win rate, and I only died 3.5 times. Now in the preseason, now this is a low sample size. It's only 9 games, but it's only 22% win rate, and I've died like twice as much on a lot of champions across the board. And it's because, well, number one, there's a lot of damage out there, assassins, all that kind of stuff. But also, I just don't have as much agency. I just can't start fights. I can't punish people. I can't help my allies who are just doing really stupid crap. I just can't assert my dominance in the game as much as I could. I don't have as much agency as I do when I play someone like Leona and Thresh. Now, Leona and Thresh are lower. Those are really low sample sizes, though. Right? But 40% still more than 22%. And then Rakan is kind of a nice blend. I think Rakan's actually really good right now, and a lot of people are kind of sleeping on him because he can use Aftershock very well, and that's great on Rakan because he doesn't want to build tank items anyways, and so getting all that free tankiness is nice. Now, he can build tank. You know, he can go Talisman, Ruby Sightstone, stuff like that, but he also likes having the option of going something like an Ardent Censer or a Redemption or, you know, something like that. So Rakan still has a very versatile build, and he really appreciates that Aftershock because his kit is just not that tanky in and of itself. Certainly not as tanky as like an Alistar or a Leona. So he benefits very, very heavily from Aftershock. But he's still kind of Enchanter-esque. So anyways, that's just something that I've noticed is I think right now you really, if you want to win, you need to be trying to play something with a bit more agency. If you like it. Once again, you can still win the Soraka, you can still win the Sona, stuff like that. I just feel like it's a little bit harder because there's more damage and people are just going to be playing stuff they're just not good at. It's just, all the play is going to drop, it feels like, at least a full league. So if you're in Platinum, it's going to feel like gold games. If you're in gold, it's going to feel like silver. If you're in silver, it's going to feel like bronze. If you're in bronze, you're not gonna know, like, you're not gonna have a clue what your allies are doing. I mean, it might be like Wood 5 or something, who knows. But yeah, it just feels like everyone is playing at a much lower level because they are experimenting with champions and just they don't care and all that kind of stuff. So I think when the chaos, you know, when the chaos is strong, then you need to play something that is, you know, reliable and can take control and exert a lot of agency in games. You can't just go with the flow, in other words. In these types of games, I think because you're just going to be playing at a much lower level is what it seems like to me. Okay, so the top 5 in each role, I think Jarvan is the top, both jungler and top lane. That champion is ridiculous. There are 3 champions that have to be banned right now, like no matter what. Okay, Jarvan, Kassadin, Ezreal. Those champions have to be banned. And Jarvan and Ezreal are good in 2 roles. And then Kassadin is so oppressive in the mid lane, and he just takes over games. You have to get Kassadin out of there. He's ridiculous. Like, if they're playing another mage mid lane, you might as well just pack it up. Like, you're probably gonna lose. Kassadin, I've raged about this guy so much on the stream. Not that much all the time, but there were just one day in particular. I just remember, just think about this for a second. Let me see if I can pull this game up. It's probably still in my history. Where were those Kassadin games? There were 2 back-to-back where I ended up playing against the same person. One game he actually took over kind of early, and that's what you would expect with an assassin, right? He does well early, snowballs. That's all good. I can't find it offhand, I don't think. Oh, wait. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So, this Aery, like, Kassadin literally went 0 and 5 in the laning phase, and he was down probably 50 CS at one point in the game. Maybe not that much, maybe 30. He was down 30 CS, 0 and 5 in lane as an assassin. And you would think, okay, well, that's done. Like, you know, There's no way this person comes back. But then he ends the game 8-8 and ends up doing basically the same amount of damage as Aery, who's another assassin type of champion. And Aery is 18-5. Aery at the time when Kassadin was 0-5 in lane, Aery was like 9-2 or something like that. And she still couldn't take over the game. And Aery is not a bad champion. Like, she can snowball her leads. But Kassadin just won this game single-handedly. So it's not like he came back into the game and he was still just like kind of relevant after going 0-5. You know, he had some crowd control, or, you know, that's the profile of like a tank type of champion, right? Where you fall behind early and then you come back and you're relevant later because you've opted into a low damage champion that has crowd control and good team-wide buffs and stuff like that. No. This is a super high damage assassin that's if he snowballs, he's unstoppable. But also, even if he gets completely beaten up and shut out of the game early, he still comes back and takes over the game later. Because once he gets his rod going, he's very tanky. He has this spammable shield that makes him very tough, difficult to kill. And he just comes back and takes over and still does the most damage on his team and the same amount of damage as someone who's 18-5. Does it show? It doesn't show the gold differential, does it? Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. She still has 2,000 more gold than him. You know? And that just shouldn't happen. Like, this champion is just so busted. Like, if you want to win games, like, for free, just spam Kassadin. If he's banned, just play Taliyah. Just one of those two champions. Taliyah is just a lot harder to play. The thing about Kassadin, there's no skill shots. Like, literally, you just mash your face on the keyboard and you just win games with Kassadin. Like, that's the recipe for something that's overpowered that needs to be banned. I talked about this in my pick ban dodge video, and he meets every criteria for that. Very high scaling, very versatile, good in almost any matchup. Like, even matchups that seem to be really bad for him, like Zed or Talon, he can still do all right in those matchups because he gets Hourglass anyways. You'd have to go something super cheese like Pantheon to just like completely shut him out. But even if you do, I mean, he was 0-5. He can still come back and make it. So, good versatility, good in a lot of game states, great in almost any matchup, super high scaling, super high mobility, you know, very difficult to counter, and just super easy to play. And then just not really banned as often as he should be, and not picked as often as he should be. So these are all recipes for things that are just way too overpowered. And Jarvan meets the same criteria, and that's why he's, you know, at the top of the list too. He's very similar. Very high damage, very tanky. It doesn't matter how you build him. He doesn't have bad matchups. He's not banned nearly enough. He's not picked nearly enough. And that's just it. You can either go full lethality on him and still be super tanky, or you can be super tanky and still almost one-shot the 80 carry. So both of those champions are ridiculous. And then Ezreal, of course, has two different varieties. You've got 80 Ezreal with Klepto, which gives him a ton of extra gold, a ton of extra items and sustain in lane, and allows him to power past his historical weak point. So with Ezreal, typically why he hasn't been good a lot over the years is he has to get Tear of the Goddess early, and that sets him back 750 gold on the opposition. And so usually he'll have like Tear of the Goddess and maybe a pickaxe or something by the time they're getting the BF sword. He'll have Tear plus pickaxe if he's really far ahead. Usually he'll just have like Tear and like longsword or something. And they have BF sword. And then you're just really far behind. You can't fight for a lot of the game. You're just sort of behind the power curve. But because of how much extra gold he gets off of Kleptomancy, then all of a sudden he can power through that. So now he can have Tear plus Sheen, or he can have, you know, Tear plus Pickaxe working towards Manamune when they have BF Sword. So now he's not really that far behind. And once he gets Tear plus Sheen, he does pretty good damage in lane. Like, pretty serious poke damage. So that is what makes Ezreal really strong, is he gets a lot of free gold, and then he can get enchanted boots off of that tree as well, which is another, you know, 350 gold value with extra 10 move speed, because he gets free boots and 50% less gold for the upgrade on the boots. And he has a pretty good single item power spike, whether he decides to go Trinity Force or whether he wants to complete Manamune. So his first, second, and third items are all pretty big power spikes on him. Trinity, Manamune, Boy of the Ruined King are all strong. So he's good at 1, 2, or 3 items. Now, he starts to get outscaled a little bit if the game goes long enough to get like 4 items on someone like a Twitch versus someone like a Twitch or a Tristana. But he's still really good. I mean, those Qs are going to hit people for like half their health later in the game. Even early in the game, like a Sheen hit's going to do like a third of your health in lane. So Ezreal is just ridiculously powerful right now. So it's pretty much most people understand you pick ban him every game. So that's why. And then in the jungle, it's slightly different. I don't think most jungle Ezreals go Kleptomancy anymore. But it's a similar concept. You don't have to get Tear of the Goddess, and you just rush. I think he just rushes Warrior, Trinity, Duskblade, and does a ton of damage. So he has really good clear, really good ganks, really good 1v1 potential. So he's just great out of the jungle as well. So those are the 3 that I think you have to ban or pick every game if you can. J4, Kassadin, and Ezreal. So other good picks. Top lane, you've got Urgot. There are a lot of different ways you can build Urgot, but one of the really good combos with him is your W procs press the attack really quickly. So if you hit somebody with a Q and then you go in on them and press W, you're going to get to press the attack. So you're going to trigger it and get that bonus damage, and then that extra damage, that extra 12% is going to apply to all the rest of your W shots. And so that makes him super, super strong right now. And people just are not picking or banning him either. So, you know, even at high level play, he's got a 54% win rate. You can see kind of what a lot of people are going with him. It's just press the attack, and then some people go sorcery, some people go resolve. But the Frozen Mallet is just such a strong combo on him because it keeps people in your W for longer, and it makes him very tanky. It scales with his shield on his W. It's just a really good combo. And then obviously Cleaver is your other combo. So he has a pretty nice single item power spike at Frozen Mallet, and then once he gets Cleaver, that's a really nice 1-2 punch there. And then you can just build him tanky after that, and he'll do enough damage to be very, very relevant. And they just buffed him like a couple of patches ago where they made the legs scale down to 2.5 second recharge time on the legs, which is a really big deal. So yeah, Urgot's a beast. Decent early game, okay harassment, but then in that mid game, once he gets these 2 items, he just starts taking off. So yeah, Urgot's a beast, nice damage, nice tankiness. Cho'Gath is another one, very, very good with grasp, allows him to trade efficiently in lane, so now it gives him more healing on top of the healing that he already gets from killing minions, and it's just really, really good on him. Fiora is another one that I think is pretty good. She can abuse sudden impact whenever she dashes forward to give her lethality, which, I mean, lethality is not the biggest deal in the world because a lot of her stuff does true damage, but she still does normal auto attacks. So, I think that she's the best sort of hard carry top laner. Like, you can do Riven as well, but I think Fiora just has a much better matchup against tanks, you know, so she's better at cutting down the Leona and cutting down the Thresh, the Cho'Gath, the Urgot, all that kind of stuff. So I think you will see more tanks, and of course she can still crush squishies. There is a build on her where she can go Trinity pretty early. If you want to, instead of Cleaver. So Cleaver's better against tanks, Trinity's better for split pushing and sort of 1v1. So you can go things like Trinity against, you know, if you're against a Jax or something like that. Like, that's exactly what happened here with Faker, right? Faker went Trinity because he was against Jax. So if you are going to be the split pusher, it looks like specifically against Jax, then Trinity can be a pretty good buy instead of Cleaver, if you're against somebody who's not going to buy a lot of armor. So she's pretty versatile, and she's a good complement if you do show up to fights, if you don't just split all game, which is nice if you like to show up to fights every now and then. She's pretty good combo with in an assassin high-paced meta, and the reason is there's just so much damage that when you kill somebody, then you get that victory field. So, you know, if you have a Leona, a Kha'Zix, and I don't know, a Callista or a Syndra or something like that on your team, a Kassadin, whenever they get the kills on people, as long as you have your ultimate on them, everybody's going to get this big healing field. So she's just very snowbally in a fight. where when you get kills, you know, it's going to benefit your team and just snowball and help them win the whole fight. So I think she's pretty good. You know, you could substitute for Fiora. Like I said, you could put Riven there. I have Akali kind of closely behind her. Akali is similar. I think that Gunblade users are very strong right now because, as I've said several times, it's a single item meta, and Gunblade is one of the best single item power spikes in the game. So like Gunblade and Trinity Force are kind of the two best. And Akali, obviously the #1 person, if you didn't know this, the #1 person on the ladder is an Akali main. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody should main Akali, but it does sort of... Well, I guess Viper's up there now, and he is Riven. But Blade is Akali, just all over the place. Akali. And I think that this is a really good, if you've ever wanted to play Akali, I think this is a good meta to learn her. And once again, the major reason for that is that Gunblade is such a good single item power spike, and she gets resets too. So anyone who has this kind of reset mechanic is going to be very good in an up-tempo meta where people are just getting assassinated and dying because you're going to get more resets. That's what's propelled Katarina to a really high ranking as well right now. Oops, I got punked. It's because resets are so easy because it's a super high damage meta. And so people are just dying left and right, and so you get your resets as cap. So anything that has resets right now is going to be really good. And Akali is one of those top lane. So she has a good single item power spike. She has pretty good matchups into most champions. She really abuses sudden impact because she has so many jumps. So you can keep that up a lot. And it benefits, the lethality benefits your autos, and the magic pen benefits your abilities. So she benefits from both of those. So sudden impact is extremely good on her. I imagine she probably uses press the attack. She might use Aery. Let me see. I mean, she could use a variety of different ones. Yeah, it looks like a lot of people use Aery. 63% win rate. But you gotta, most of these games played are from the MLG whatever guy. They're from Blade. So yeah, I mean, she can use a bunch of different stuff, but she has that core item, the Hextech Gunblade, and this is just such a huge power spike for people because that active does so much damage early game. They nerfed this last season, or maybe the season before that. If you're just new to playing, it used to do even more damage. But that active, 30% ability power in addition to 175 base damage on a 40-second cooldown is massive. That's a lot of damage on your first item. And it's very good on hybrid champions that auto and have AD ratio somewhere in their kits. That's why this is like the ideal item on Katarina. It's because she has AD ratios as well. So it has ability power with the AD ratio. It heals you, which is very good for extended fights and resets as well. So, you know, this just has Akali written all over it top lane. So Akali is going to be one of the better assassins top lane, I think. So watch out for that. She'll have a hard time kind of early, probably against Urgot. I'm not sure she can kill Cho'Gath later, but overall, I think she'll be pretty good. And she scales very, very well too. So not only does she have a good single item power spike, but then once she starts getting more items, she gets very, very difficult to deal with because she has so much healing in her kit. Then I talked about Cass, talked about Taliyah several times. Malzahar is another one that I think is really good right now. Malzahar is just very good against assassins, right? When you have a press R, lock somebody down, do a ton of damage, that's a powerful move, obviously. He has very good wave clear, similar to Taliyah in a meta where there's not very much wave clear in most positions, so that's good. And you can just roam. Like, he doesn't have abilities to help you roam like Taliyah or Kassadin. He can't cover a lot of ground quickly, but because he can push in so well with his minions, he can go ahead and start running while his minions and his E are finishing up the wave. So he can get a few seconds head start on the other mid laner if he just spams his E. Mana Flow Band helps him out a ton early on as well because he's a huge mana hog, and so being able to run Mana Flow is good. He does benefit very heavily from Aery, but I think he'll survive the Aery nerf. He can still run Aery, or he can run Comet. That's fine. And Malzahar is kind of like Ashe. He's a utility mid laner. You're not picking him to top the damage charts. He can put out some decent damage, but he's mostly picked for his utility. For his ability to push, roam, ult, kill on a very low cooldown. So, I think he's very good, but particularly against other AP casters. Just anyone that's not casted is going to have a pretty hard time against him, probably. Excellent with ganks, stuff like that. So, Malzahar just thrives in a meta that's very early to mid-game centric with a lot of squishy champions that you can burst down. Katarina is the other one that I mentioned. Similar to Akali, benefits very heavily from resets. Even if she doesn't get the kill, if someone else gets the kill in the fight, she's going to start getting these resets. And she's a very good Gunblade user, and Gunblade's awesome right now. So I think that just bodes very well for Kat. She has decent wave clear, kind of a tough matchup early against a lot of other champions, but once she hits 6, obviously she gets a ton of kill pressure, and she roams very, very well. Pretty hard to play though, so you have to practice her a lot. Zed, finally, I think Zed's really strong. People just aren't playing him a lot right now. Kat and Zed are both excellent sudden impact users as well from the domination tree. I think Zed benefits quite a bit here because Aery got nerfed and he didn't use Aery, so obviously that's going to help electrocute users like Zed. Zed likes electrocute over Aery because it has such a great bonus attack damage ratio of a 0.5, so it scales very well with him. He can still go the Overcharger build if he wants to, or Transcendence build, or whatever, where he just spams Black Cleavers, and he can get like 4,000 health with like 400 something AD. Red Mercy has a video on his channel if you want to check that out. So it's kind of a troll build, but it's interesting. He can also just go for the standard, Duskblade, Ghostblade build. Does a lot of damage, snowballs very well. Can really take advantage of people that are playing squishy champions they don't know how to play. So overall, pretty solid. In the jungle, talked about J4, talked about Rammus, talked about Ezreal. Zen does a ton of damage. Like, he benefits from sudden impact as well. Just really high burst, sustained damage. Really good with press the attack. So, great pressure early, great damage later. He can get kited, but he complements tanky supports very well because tanky supports can just hold him in place. And then Zen just blows him up. So, if you've got your Thresh or your Leona holding somebody still, they can't kite if they're CC locked. And so that helps Zen just stick to targets and do massive damage. And then Sejuani is the other one that I think is really strong out of the jungle. She's very good with Aftershock. It combos with her passive to make her like almost literally unkillable. For 2 to 3 seconds, she might as well have invulnerability. And she just is a CC machine. She's just really hard to kill, puts out decent damage, sustained damage in team fights. Just has a lot of really good protection. So if you have a lot of damage in all your other positions, you have your Fiora, you've got your, mid lane Katarina, you've got your bot lane Twitch. She's just a very good wall that's just really hard to get through. Lots of crowd control, just impossible to kill in fights. So she's just very frustrating to go against, and she's still really strong. Finally, AD. Ezreal, I've talked about him. Kleptomancy just dramatically accelerates his power curve and makes him extremely strong throughout the entire game. Kalista is very good. Excellent single item power spike with Blade of the Ruined King. She just has a whole lot of natural damage in her kit with the Ren. She doesn't need a ton of items. And she has a lot of great utility. So she's excellent at taking objectives, particularly Dragon and Baron, because your Ren can outsmite people most of the time. And then tons of early game damage. Great kiting potential against some of the tanky supports out there. And great synergy with tanky supports because she can throw them into the fight. So if you throw the Alistar in or the Leona into the fight, that's a great extra initiation tool that you have. So Kalista is still super strong right now. Excellent with sudden impact. Every time she jumps, it triggers sudden impact. So gives her basically a free 10 lethality, which is really nice with her rend. So that's good stuff. Twitch is another major beneficiary here. Excellent. I think people might start going back to the Blade of the Ruined King plus Hurricane even more. That's a faster power spike than Infinity Edge. You can still go Infinity Hurricane. That's fine. But yeah, Twitch, awesome. I talked about him a lot earlier. He's still really good. A lot better now that Aery champions aren't going to be doing as much damage to him early. Misfortune, super good. Talked about her before. She currently runs Aery. She can still run it. That'll be fine. Or she can run Comet. That'll also be fine. And then finally, Tristana. So Tristana I have on here. Tristana could also easily be Varus. One or the other. So Varus has a much better single item power spike once he finishes his Gensus. He has a noticeable weakness when he just has Blasting Wand before he completes Gensus. But he's still really good, has great utility, excellent scaling. He's just a lot more dangerous. So Tristana has 2 escapes. She has her ult that can knock people back. Then she also has her jump, of course. And she's very good in fights where people are dying because she gets resets. So, and she takes objectives really well. She still does a ton of damage. She has pretty good ability-based damage, especially when she turns 6. So she has a really nice power spike at 6. Even though her itemization is not very conducive to a power spike, you know, because she still needs to get Infinity Edge Static Shiv. Just her ability to press R on somebody and do 300 damage at level 6 is a really nice power spike. So I do not recommend. I've seen people try Blazer and King on her. That's absolute garbage. You need to run crit on her. But she's still decent. So it could be any number of people. You know, I feel like Xayah is pretty good too right now. She just needs a couple more items once again. She's bad with Blazer and King. She likes to go Essence Reaver. So I think that like Xayah, but she has a lot of ability damage. So, you know, it's that crit goes a long way because her E scales off of crit. So that Essence Reaver means a lot more on her than it would mean on most other champions. So it actually is a pretty powerful single item power spike, the Essence Reaver on her. Although it really starts warming up and getting more powerful when she gets a couple more crit items. But yeah, Tristana, Varus, Xayah, all of those are kind of like in the 4th slot for me. They can win. In theory, you would think that Lucian would be really good with either Essence Reaver or Blazer and King, but for some reason it just doesn't play out that way. I think he's just still pretty dangerous. I don't know. Lucian with Press the Attack is pretty good. Just statistically, he's not doing very well at high-end play or even at lower-end play. So I'm not really sure why that is. I think it's still just that he only has 500 range, and that makes him inherently very dangerous to position with in team fights. So I don't know. Caitlyn's probably the worst AD carry right now. It's pretty close. Caitlyn's really bad. She doesn't synergize with a lot of the runes. She needs multiple items. She has a terrible single item power spike. Like she can't use Bork. She can't use Trinity. She can't use Gensus. Sivir similarly is pretty weak right now. Jhin is okay. He does have a nice power spike at Duskblade. He is very powerful early on. He doesn't have a lot of synergy with like Press the Attack, but he can use Comet pretty well. So Jin's still like, Jin's alright. But yeah. I think who else? Ashe is okay. She's got her arrow. I just think Varus is a better version of Ashe. And yeah. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. So that's just kind of my top 5 for each role, meta-analysis, and then patch notes. It's not too long. It ended up being about an hour. I would have liked for it to have been shorter, but I did spend a lot of time going in depth about the top 5. But we'll do the tier list in the next video, so stay tuned for that. I'll probably release that today as well. I should be able to get it done before the stream. I do have to go to sleep for a couple hours here, but I'll try to have that done by the stream. So, anyways, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.